All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the FIT40 Podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy parents 40 plus so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we have an awesome guest with us. Sam Forget is back in the house for part number 3. If you haven't caught part 1 and 2, pause right here, go back and listen, because he's an expert when it comes to helping burnt out dieters break the cycle of yo-yo dieting. He's been a coach for over 10 years. He has been a fellow presenter with me for the Real Coaches Summit pregame back in 2023 or 24, whatever. He knows his stuff to the point where he's literally teaching other coaches, and he is possibly the top no BS guy in the fitness space that I know, because it's genuine, it's helpful, and he does it with empathy. So I'm very happy to have Sam back on. So Sam, welcome to the show.
Dude, what an intro. Thank you so much for that. As I was telling you off air, I was already impressed by all the upgrades to the visuals, like boom mic, everything I'm seeing in the background. But your intro as well, I mean, you were just firing on all cylinders, man. This is great. I appreciate it.
I think I just timed the caffeine just ever so perfectly. Now, I gotta admit, I usually come into these podcasts with a lot of talking points. I'm like, all right, let's get 10 just in case the conversation dies down and we gotta like jump into something else. But you and me were ranting about this in the Instagram Messenger over text, and I'm like, this is gonna fill the hour. So everybody who's listening right now, you probably already read the title, but me and Sam have a bone to pick with people our age, or pretty much anybody who's ever said the words, wait till you're my age, or wait until you get to blank. So let's talk about that. Okay, so without any preface, I guess, no context whatsoever, what are your first thoughts when you hear somebody start with the words, wait till you're fill in the blank?
Well, first of all, it drives me absolutely bananas, and I'll explain why in a second. But first, I think it's super important for us to acknowledge that two things can be true simultaneously. Yes, absolutely, undeniably, certain things get harder as you're older. We're not sitting here. Brian, you're 30 or 31?
32.
32. Okay, close. So we're not sitting here at 30 and 32 speaking to everybody older than us, acting like certain things don't get harder. We have a combined 20-something years of experience working with people of all ages, personal life experience. Absolutely. Things get harder. So we got that out of the way. We hear you. We see you for sure. But another thing can be true, which is you're not exactly doing yourself any favors in terms of the way you're living your life, in terms of how that supports your aging. And I actually think of an example from my early 20s when I was taking an improv class with a gentleman who was 30 years old. And I will never forget the line that he said to me at 30. I was 23 at the time, and it already drove me mad. He said, Sam, wait till you get to my age. Again, he was 30, not 130, not 80, not 50. He was 30 years old. And he said, and I quote, I hope he doesn't hear this, by the way, but whatever. A 30-year-old body is like a broken down house. And I'm sitting here at 23 listening, dude, you're throwing in the towel now. If you have the average life expectancy of, let's say late 70s, round up, call it 80. What's his mentality going to be when the next 50 years of his life? What a defeated mindset to have. And I say this I'm not trying to roast this person, but because I hate that for him. I did then. I don't know how he's living now. I haven't talked to him in 7 years, but I do now, because with fairly simple things, you can age gracefully and you can mitigate a lot of the things that people pretty much entirely chalk up to age exclusively, when in reality it's a combination of age and lifestyle factors. Perhaps that's a good place for us to start. But again, two things can be true. Shit gets harder, no denying that. But also, are you doing yourself any favors with the way that you're operating? In most cases, the answer to that question is no.
Yeah. And I like how you frame that, where you're like, I hate that ... for him, because that's a very coach answer, where it's like, listen, we don't judge, but we can see the potential. You are so much better than this line of thinking, and you have so much that you can achieve, but that mindset, you're just going to go downhill if you keep believing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you highlighted that specifically, because I don't want anybody listening to this to feel like, again, you have this 30 and 32-year-old who are objectively young coming at you for you and your mentality. Because the other thing that I recognize, of course, is that like I'm fortunate, and again, we were talking about this a little bit off air, that I have parents who take care of themselves, who are fit and healthy. So when I was younger, that was normal to me to see people in their 30s and 40s who were fit and exercising, eating healthy. Okay, great. And again, I recognize that if I did not have that example, if I had parents who were, when I was younger, 30 and 40, who were saying, just wait till you get to my age, buddy, that I would likely adopt that mindset too. So again, I hate that, but not in a I'm coming at you way. I just hate that you've been led to believe that, you're when you turn 25 or 30, your body just hits this wall and becomes, to use his words, a broken down house. That's not the case at all. And honestly, I've even been hearing stuff like this since my early 20s because my athletic background is in basketball. And so the joke with basketball specifically becomes my knees hurt just looking at you jump. And these were men's leagues when I was 22. I'm like, dude, and don't get me wrong. When you have a lot of mileage on your legs, yet again, it's two things can be true. There's some wear and tear, absolutely, more than the average person. But also to those basketball players, are you doing any strength training outside of the gym? Are you focusing on any sort of recovery? What are you doing besides just sporadically hopping into a full speed men's league game? So yet again, I want to keep straddling the line here and acknowledge, everything from the messaging that you heard when you were younger, the things you've been told, and certain things do get harder, but also you're capable of a lot more, and things don't have to turn to shit because you hit this arbitrary spot in your life.
Yeah. And I think it's important to differentiate the two types of sentences that come from one, an active person saying, just wait till you're my age, and somebody who just kind of put everything on the back burner saying, just wait till you're my age. Because the active person, totally fair. Like we only have X amount of movement in each joint. Like at a certain point, yes, orthopedic issues are going to be a thing. It just is the way life is. We're similar to cars in that way. Sometimes you do need a part replaced.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about the other side of the equation, where it's somebody who has hit a point in their life where work is top priority, which it honestly for most people should be because money makes the world go around. It helps us do the things we want to do and helps us get access to better healthcare, which keeps us healthier and all that good stuff. So work takes top priority, which gets in the way of workouts. And then we throw and also potentially eating healthy options, even though there's strategies for that. And on top of that, having kids. So now your sleep goes to absolute crap. There's more stress load. And basically, you have all these factors working against you to not get the job done, which, I mean, you and me have seen this time and time again. And it's like totally empathize with that person because that's not easy. And I'm gearing up for when that day comes when I do have kids. I'm like, this is going to be substantially harder. And I'm well aware of that, but I'm trying to put in the work ahead of time. But that aside, it's like it's two different types of conversations because you help these two types of people so differently. So I think it'll help if we focus on that person that I just described, where it's like, okay, they've had all these life things happen. What exactly do we do? So if somebody's listening right now and said, okay, I've been saying that, but I want to cut that bullshit line of thinking out, like I want better for me. Where do I start?
I honestly think the highest yield thing for most people, I guess if we start on the activity side of things, because that's where I feel like it gets brought up a lot of just feeling these aches and pains and feeling beat up and chalking it up to age. So to start on the activity side of things, I think the highest yield focal point for most people is walking more. And I know this is where people roll their eyes and just like, okay, yeah, walking really, that's the magic tip for anti-aging. But if we look at a lot of the things that, again, people chalk up to age, like quote unquote slower metabolism or, a progressive weight gain, a lot of it is a gradual reduction in your average step count on a daily basis from, say, your early 20s when you feel like it was mostly a metabolic thing. And then you get into your 30s. And then, as you mentioned, Brian, people might be, sitting in a desk all day, understandably focusing on work or driving the kids around. And there's a lot of time spent in the car and just not being nearly as active as they once were. So again, as simple as this sounds, that's one of the first things I would add is just how much are you moving on a daily basis? And like I just said, I think a lot of people roll their eyes at this, like, all right, that's the magic pill, walking more. In many ways, yeah. And I'm talking about it from a metabolic standpoint, yeah, but to steal a line from Don Saladino, a body in motion likes to stay in motion. And I realize that that sounds kind of ambiguous and hard to quantify. Like, yeah, it's a nice soundbite. What does it actually mean? In terms of how much better you are going to feel on a daily basis, it is astronomical. Your digestion will improve, your energy levels will increase, stress relief, cognition, indirectly improve sleep at night. So, yeah, there's the metabolic difference that I'm talking about, but the spillover effect to so many other areas is enormous. And a lot of those things that I just mentioned, in terms of just feeling low energy and flat and stressed, people chalk all that up to age related stuff. But if you just get your step count up, and if you're listening to this right now and you're averaging anything under, I would say 7 or 8,000, that's the first benchmark I would try to push most people to, because that's under 10% of your day. You can spend less than 10% of your day moving and get to 7 to 8,000 steps. So if we flip that, that means you can sit down for 90% of the day and still get to 7 to 8,000. And the reason I recommend that is kind of a minimum range is you can get a good chunk of the benefits that walking more has to offer by at least getting that. And then things taper off a little bit. If you get 10,000, great. If you get 12,000, great. But I don't want to, and I think we talked about this via DM too. I don't want people to, or maybe an Instagram post. I don't want people to feel like if they can't get 10,000, it's not worth it. If you're at 3,000 right now and you get your average up to 7,000 steps per day, again, a lot of those things that you were chalking up to age, you realize that's likely more movement related, just kind of how I've been spending my time. That's probably the first place I'd start.
Yeah. And if anybody does want to like nerd out on studies that like investigate the difference between steps at different quantities, the biggest spike you see in health benefits happens from like 0 to 2K. Like if you go from barely moving to 2K, it's absurd at how all cause mortality is affected. It's insane. I wish I had the raw numbers right now, but if you do want to nerd out on it, go ahead and look it up. But, and as you're saying that too, just anecdotally, I know I was working with one of my clients this morning, one of my personal training clients, and how you said a body in motion loves to stay in motion. This is a woman who she carries a good amount of excess body fat. So she was laying most of the day or sitting most of the day because it physically hurt to stand up. Now she does some strength training, and all of a sudden now she's cleaning the house a little bit more frequently and bending over and picking stuff up. And she's even getting compliments or just comments from her family members saying, you're moving more in the past 2 months than you have in the past 2 years. And she had the immediate FU response, but at the same time, she was like, all right, when you start moving and you do it in a pain-free way, it feels good to move more.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I'll throw in here is I think the necessary dose of movement to experience a lot of these benefits, whether it is walking, whether it is strength training, cardio, is way smaller than people realize, because like we're fortunate that we have the knowledge base to know, okay, again, even off the ground floor to 2,000 steps and then 7 to 8,000, or strength training wise, if we get in 2 hard full body sessions per week, great, we get a big chunk of those benefits. I think if you pull and say, what do you think you need to do to experience these outcomes and get these benefits? It's, an hour of cardio per day and no carbs and living in the gym. So I also understand that as well when we're sitting here saying, well, you just got to move and exercise and eat a little bit better. And a lot of these age related things won't be as big of a concern. You'll feel them less. The perception is that you have to do far more, be far more extreme than you actually have to be. So of course, that's one of the other reasons we're so passionate about this. It's like, hey, no, it's not actually as brutal as you think. Adding 1 to 2,000 steps per week to your daily average for a couple of weeks, that could be a huge month for you. Same thing if you're only sporadically strength training, even getting to those 2 full body sessions. First master the movements, make sure they're fairly pain free, then ramp up the weight. Again, it doesn't have to be this massive dose to experience these benefits. So I also think that's important for people to not acknowledge, important for people to realize as well.
Absolutely. And as you were saying that, I couldn't help but think of all the people we know that have either just recently turned into parents or maybe have a few kids, where they adjust their programs to either just maintain, which a lot of people don't realize takes like next to nothing. Like if you're doing 3 days of hard workouts, you could do just one day and maintain everything that you're maintaining to a degree. Like people like Jordan Lips, Jordan Syatt, Vinny Russo, who we had on recently, Adam Badger. Like, they're all fathers, and they've been very vocal about, hey, I don't work out like an animal at this point because I have a newborn or like a 2-year-old that's keeping me up all night. So I adjust. Like Jordan Syatt's like working out at midnight right now because that's just what has to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jordan, I think, is actually a great person to highlight because once upon a time, he was at the other extreme. He's training at Westside Barbell, where, it might take you 3 hours start to finish with, he was deadlifting 4 times body weight. It might be 30 minutes of warm up sets and then an hour after. And, it's just these monstrous workouts. But you ebb and flow as life changes, as you get older, as your priorities and responsibilities change. And like you said, like we're emphasizing here, that dose can be relatively small, which I want people to hear and be kind of relieved about. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I could set aside 30 minutes twice per week for a very simple full body session, compound movements, 2 sets per movement. And we can talk, of course, more about what that could look like. But okay, that feels a lot more manageable to get on my over 30 real life responsibilities calendar than what I thought it had to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, when it comes to this population where they're like, okay, I have all these stressors, I have all these things. Another big thing that can help a ton is getting creative and flexible on the nutrition side of things, because along with these high bars that we set for fitness, where it's like, got to do an hour of cardio, got to do an hour of strength training. It's also, you're getting hit with the Instagram mommy and daddy guilt of, oh, I'm not doing everything organic and cooking every single thing from home and making sure that I'm not exposing my kids to plastic or aluminum or all this shit. And it's like, all right, let's pump the brakes and let's get the big rocks. So like, what would be some that you'd be focused on if somebody was in this place right now and they're like, what's just some simple things I can do?
Yeah. So if we think about nutrition the same way we just thought about steps, where we're just trying to get you off the ground floor from 2,000 a day to 4,000 per day to 7 to 8, we wouldn't take somebody who's averaging 3,500 steps working from home and not moving and say 10,000 a day starting tomorrow. That's a bad strategy the vast majority of the time. So it's the same with nutrition, where, if somebody comes to us and maybe they are skipping breakfast, just having a granola bar, just having, living off coffee the first 7 hours of every day, we're not going to say you need to make an egg white omelet with 5 different vegetables and like that becomes your daily minimum. No, we look at all the things in between. So right now, let's say you're making zero time for yourself in the morning, not even setting aside 5 minutes to sit down and have something without a distraction. And I realize for parents, specifically, this won't always be possible, but just doing the best you can and give yourself at least a few minutes in the morning to have a meal that has a little bit of protein. So this is where people, have asked before, like, is it okay to have like a pre-made protein shake? I don't feel like I have time to do a homemade one. Yeah, get off the ground floor. Right now, you've been having very little protein in the morning. Have a core power, have a muscle. Go, fine, totally.
Quest just made some ready to drinks that are 45 grams of protein. Boom.
I mean,
Ton.
yeah, perfect. Yeah. Right. And if we think about it again, similar to the step thing, like right now, if you're making no time for breakfast and having virtually no protein, I just want you off the ground floor. So maybe you add something like a core power, you have a Quest shake and then a banana. Great. Maybe a little bit of protein, a little bit of fiber. Maybe over time, we work you up to, more whole foods. Maybe you do have an omelet, just sneak in a couple of vegetables in the morning, have a side of fruit, a homemade shake. Great. But I would never want somebody to land somewhere in the middle, which to your point, Brian, is so common now because you see stuff on social media that's like, eat oatmeal, it's good for you, it has protein. And then you see a video of somebody in the grocery store saying it's poison and you shouldn't touch it. And you're like, okay, well, can I have this? And then you have it. It's like, well, this isn't good enough for this reason. So it makes the bar for taking action so high when it doesn't have to be. We just look at where you at now, direction over speed, where can we get you a win? And then we keep stacking wins and gradually work your way up.
Yep. And I know everybody that listens to this podcast or anybody who has for a while knows when you hear people like that demonizing things, if they're saying it's a danger to you, always ask what's the dosage? Like what exactly is the dosage in what I'm eating or drinking or getting exposed to, and how much is in this product? And that'll answer a whole lot of questions and tell you exactly who not to listen to. But if we're chasing benefits, it's like there's no downside, where it's like the only thing that could potentially happen is if you get a supplement that says it does all these great things, but then it's underdosed, then you're wasting money. But at least you're not putting yourself in harm's way, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, no, this is a smart audience, so I'm glad that we keep hammering that home, because it's always good to hear in the sea of craziness, because social media is a shitstorm, and it always will be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I wouldn't want the bar to actually. I was just having a conversation with somebody about this who's super fit. He's been at it for 40 something years. He is the top of the proverbial mountain. And I was explaining to him, or we were just having a conversation about who is like very fit and healthy like he is. Like if he has an off week or two, he's still pretty close to the top of the mountain. Maybe he stumbles down a little bit, but he dusts himself off and he looks up and the peak is still right there. A lot of people feel like they're at the bottom of this health and fitness mountain. And if they look up and see, like, I was going to say black hole, that wouldn't make sense for a mountain whatsoever. I saw Superman last night and there was a black hole. That's why it's top of mind.
No, hey, no spoilers. I still have to see it.
But so picture if you're looking up this mountain, and not only do you have a mountain to climb, but you have, let's say, a mountain lion halfway up, and you have this thick brush you have to get through, and you got to climb and swing over stuff. You're probably going to say, "Nah, like I'm just not doing that." Whereas if you have the mountain to climb, but it feels like it's a relatively straightforward, clear path, now you're far more likely to take that on. So I think again, if we can lower the bar in a good way with what's a worthwhile action, you're more likely to proceed up the mountain.
Exactly. Because it's not the sexiest thing to say, but if you take simple steps like this, even though it like comes off like a little bit boring, at the end of the day, these are things that are going to have such a huge impact. Like you don't have to you don't have to make fitness a masochistic thing where it's like, if it doesn't hurt enough, then it wasn't worth it. And it doesn't have to be that way on the nutrition side of things, where it's like, if you don't eliminate everything and have this gigantic list of know this, know that, then you're never going to see results. Like that's just not how this game works.
And my thing too is like, give what we're saying a chance for even 30 days. If you don't feel like this is enough, you feel like you have to go harder, you feel like you have to be stricter, okay, just do a little experiment for the next 30 days. Not, I'm going to make up random benchmarks here, but don't settle for fewer than 8,000 steps, fewer than, I don't know, 120 grams of protein, 150, depending on somebody's size per day. A certain bedtime every single night, 2 full body training sessions, maybe 2 shorter zone 2 cardio sessions after. Just do that for 4 weeks, because often the people who want to go harder than that have never done what I've just described for even 4 weeks uninterrupted. So you haven't actually given it a chance to work, and you're feeling like you need to be doing more. And to throw myself under the bus here, I have done this so many times with learning Spanish where, okay, I'm not where I want to be at. So starting tomorrow, I'm going to do 90 minutes a day, every single. Dude, when was the last time you did 30 minutes per day? Oh, I don't know. Never. For a month straight? Never. Not once in my life. So how about I give that a chance to work rather than making the bar super high at 90 minutes of vocab per day? I do it for 2 days and then fizzle out. The net result actually ends up being more work done over the course of a month. But again, if you don't feel like that's enough, say, I feel like this is most common with the calorie goal. We assign something and people say, oh, that feels like a lot of food. Give this a chance for 4 weeks and actually hit it, and then we can reassess.
Yep. And I'm so glad I'm not alone. And I think a lot of people are hearing this, probably thinking the same thing. But I do the same thing with business, for example, because I mean, us fitness people love to, or a lot of people love to stand on this pedestal like we're so much better than everyone. But we just have the fitness and nutrition part of life figured out, whereas somebody in business could run circles around us with their business acumen and like what they get done. So when it comes to business, like for example, I have a weekly goal of emailing 7 businesses for like a lunch and learn opportunity, just saying, hey, if you ever want me to do it for free, I'm here. And I drop the ball week after week after week. So instead of going, all right, I'm going to catch up and make up for it, and I'm going to email 30 this week, I'm like, let's just drop that bar a little bit to like, let's just email one per week. And you know what ends up happening? That first one gets done and you see the list and you're like, I can knock out a few more. And then you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And you're just like, oh, wow, I aimed for one, but I got like 15. Go me.
Yeah. Again, the net result ends up being more than when you plan to do the overly ambitious thing. And with planning in general, I always recommend, of course, it's typically through the health and fitness lens, your plan should be created for the least motivated, most fried, most time constrained version of you. Because then, okay, that version of you will ideally still be able to follow the plan if you create it intelligently. And then every other version of you will, of course, knock that plan out of the park. But if you create, again, that plan for that least motivated, most fried, most time constrained version of you, it may feel like you're just putting together a bunch of, C plus, B minus days. Well, guess what? You can still average a B minus by the end of the month compared to just these sporadic A's that require you to have infinite time and energy and bandwidth and motivation. And it's funny you mentioned, I couldn't agree more. Us fitness people, like, yeah, we're wagging our finger with health and fitness, but here I am with Spanish starting tomorrow, 5 hours a day, and I will no longer speak English. Like, okay.
And meanwhile, there's probably like a 5 or a 7-year-old in like Mexico or Brazil or somewhere that could speak 3 languages and put you to shame.
Yeah. And actually, what I really like about one of the platforms I use for Spanish acquisition, it's called Dreaming Spanish. I mean, it's just a great resource. I have no affiliation with them. Is they literally have a consistency calendar where they track, like I set a daily minimum there, just 20 minutes of watching what are basically beginner videos. So you get, visual feedback. There are no subtitles or anything. You just get to see, like, if I say, I don't know, cafe, like, and I'm holding a coffee, you kind of associate those words. So it tracks how long you've just signed in to watch a video and then whether you've hit your daily benchmark. And I can look back at previous months, and the months where I kept my daily minimum at 20 minutes, I signed in almost every single day. The months where I had it set to, say, even 60 minutes per day, I signed in like 11 out of 30 times. So if you take those 20-minute blocks, or a lot of times, to your point, Brian, I did the 20. I'm like, well, I'm already here, may as well keep going. And you add those up over the course of the month, it was 600 something minutes. Whereas the day or the months where I set it to an hour or more, because I was so inconsistent, because the bar was just higher than what felt sustainable to me on the days that I was working longer and just didn't have it in me to do more that day. The net result for that month was actually fewer minutes. And it's really interesting to see something so quantifiable, like just all of the blanks during the months where my plan was too ambitious.
Yeah. And I have concrete data too when it comes to the clients in the FIT40 program. I have like these programs, and one of them's 20 minutes, one of them's 40 minutes, basically the same amount of work, but one's a little bit more condensed. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the consistency on the 20-minute compared to the 40-minute, night and day, because 20 minutes, it's like you have no excuse not to get it done. So much better. Yeah. And I love how you brought up the concept of an accountability calendar, because I know my fiance hijacked the one downstairs. I got to buy another one because she put her work schedule on it. But I mean, having a calendar on your fridge or something, or somewhere where you see it every single day, and seeing a big check mark or a big X sign, and then seeing it like how consistent you've actually been, can be an absolute game changer. Because I know you have probably talked to plenty of clients like this as well, where it's like they tell you, they swear up and down, I'm doing all the things, I do everything, and I'm not seeing any results. And it's like, well, do we have an account of that? Like, do we know for sure? And they're like, well, I just know. And it's like, you just don't. Like,
I have a wonderful client. Her name's Jen, and she is extremely receptive to accountability, which, as you know, people ask for accountability. They don't always want it. She is somebody who's just like, give it to me straight, and she means it. The one thing that we did earlier this year that was, I think, pretty powerful from an accountability motivation standpoint is we set up her consistency calendar. I think it was maybe the month of January. And what we tracked was her consistency with her calories and protein. Now, She has a calorie, protein, and fiber target for food quality, digestion, etc. But just from like a pure weight loss standpoint, let's see, like it feels like you're being consistent, but let's see how many days per week, or actually we did it as out of 14 potential targets per week. So you have a calorie and protein goal, obviously 2 times 7 out of 14. And then we just tracked the percentage of the time she was hitting it. So I'm pulling up my phone now just to double check the math. If you hit those targets, say 11 out of 14 times, that's 78% consistent. 11 out of 14, that feels like pretty damn good. And I'm not saying it's not, but you can see how that's already down to about 80% consistent. And I find that a lot of people hang out in that kind of next tier of consistency, closer to, hitting their targets 50 to 70% of the time, but want the results associated with 80+%. Now, in the case of Jen, again, she's been wonderful. Like her quote unquote misses, they weren't by much. So that's the other thing that I like that as a tool. But what it doesn't tell us is like, okay, you were 50% consistent, technically speaking, but you were only 100 grams, or excuse me, 100 grams, 100 calories off, or your protein average is 15 grams low. So oftentimes it's not a huge adjustment, but yeah, I think having very hard data, something like that, in her case, was really effective for, it's interesting how often I'm actually in that 60 to 70 something percent range. Now, since then, she's lost almost 20 pounds, bunch of inches. She's absolutely crushing it. And, she's wonderful. But I think things like that can be eye-opening. Just, you feel like a lot of the $5 to $7 purchases at a convenience store throughout the week, they don't really make a big difference. But then you have your credit card statement, you go, ooh, okay, that's like $200 a month in bullshit. I can probably access.
Yeah, exactly. And I like how you say she doesn't miss by much, because I think this is a concept that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to 80-20. Like you hear all the time, just be good 80% of the time, 80-20, 80-20. But some people take that 20% and can realistically just completely screw up the entire week if the goal is fat loss. Because if that 20% is an extra 3, 4, 5,000 calories, then the whole week is shot as far as weight loss goes.
Yeah. And we're saying 3 to 4, 5,000 calories. The vast majority of people severely underestimate their intake. So 3 to 5,000 sounds astronomical to most people. It's not actually that hard. And I always give the example of the Cheesecake Factory salad menu. Like they list all the calories. How many of them are 12 to 1,400 calories? So if you take some of the weekend off from tracking, which of course many frustrated dieters do, they get to Friday, maybe Saturday morning, and then just phone it in tracking wise. You could look back at the day and say, I ate pretty good. And from a pure like nutrient density standpoint, perhaps, yeah, maybe that salad was objectively healthy. Maybe you split a piece of cheesecake with your partner after. Awesome. But that salad might have been 13. That cheesecake, even though it was small, might have been at Cheesecake Factory 800 to 1,000 calories. So if we say the choices, I had a salad and I split a dessert with my partner, wonderful. That still could have been almost 2,000 calories. So if you had 2 other fairly normal meals outside of that, maybe you're at 3,000, 3,500 for the day. So it's not that hard to hit these high calorie totals that erase a deficit. When we're saying 3,000 to 5,000 calories, this is not, Eddie Hall, Brian Shaw, Joey Chestnut, pick your high calorie poison. It's not that. It's really regular days. And the other analogy that I like here, if we picture a plane heading to its destination and it's on track, again, 80% of the time, great. But picture if that 20%, you just took a hard left and you just like, I was only off track 20% of the time. But yeah, what if you pull a U, like you just bang a U and you're heading the other direction? You can't really get away with that. So certainly, I like the general idea of something like 80-20, mostly dialed in, but that 20% still needs to be moderately dialed in, right? Like somewhat still on course.
You just took me back to a funny memory. I was driving back from Jersey, which was like a 6-7 hour drive. And I took a pit stop, like maybe an hour or 2 out from home. And I rely heavily on the GPS, guys. I don't know where the hell I'm going. And I just hit start I didn't know that it sent me back where I was coming from rather than continuing home. And I didn't realize it for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, well, that just added another hour. I'll just go screw myself. But that's literally what's happening with this dieting is like sometimes you are driving in reverse and you don't really know it until you look at the GPS or your tracker or something like that. And you're just like, shit.
Yeah, yeah. And if you look at, I don't know where you were coming from, but I bet if we look at total time spent driving, your time, like just minutes heading in the wrong direction, wasn't a huge percentage of the total time spent driving. But because you were literally heading the opposite way, it like the eventual path to your end destination, your end goal ends up being so much longer. Um, yeah, I mean, again, it's not like I'm saying never be flexible, especially weekends, life just lends itself to at least somewhat more flexibility. But,
Yeah.
if you've been stuck, if you've been spinning your wheels, you got to pay closer attention to that. And I mean, this is a bit of a side tangent, so I'll keep this brief, but in the moments where those sacrifices feel very unappealing and you're just like, "Oh, I just want to do X, Y, and Z," I can tell you right now that the things you'll get in return, first of all, immediately, just in terms of, not feeling bloated when you walk out of a restaurant, sleeping better that night, having more energy the next morning, a better workout, and then slightly longer term, more weight loss, better health. What you get in return for those sacrifices ends up being so worthwhile. There is very rarely going to be a morning where you wake up after making a decision to be more moderate, where you say, I really wish I went full send last night. Like I really wish I had twice the drinks and three more. You're never in the moment. We operate like that's the case. We have that level of FOMO, which I understand. But when you wake up in the morning, you're not going to regret that because you get so much more in return. And then the more often you do that, the easier it is for that great feeling in the morning to be top of mind. And then you keep chasing that feeling. So not saying again, there isn't some sacrifice and it doesn't suck sometimes, but it's not for nothing. We're not asking you to sacrifice for fun. We're saying, give us $1, you'll get 8 back. Like it's so much more often.
Yep. And I gotta say, I am one of those people that did have a moment like that where it's like, damn, I should have gotten more full send because I went on because I went on vacation and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna say screw it. I'm just gonna have a week and then the dust will settle. I'll figure it out. And then I get back home, the weight's off in a couple of days, and then I'm 2 pounds down the next week. And I'm like, damn, I felt really guilty. And I was kind of dipping my toes in the water, not fully jumping in. I would have gone bonkers if I knew.
What were just out of curiosity? Wait, where were you? What were some of the best things you had?
I went to the Outer Banks. So like Outer Banks doesn't have much. So we always do like one night out where it's like a seafood place, which it's seafood. It's like how overboard can you really go if they're not like dousing it in butter, which I got something with risotto. So, I mean, yeah, there was a lot of butter, but I literally ate to the point where I was nauseous one night because there was some marijuana in the mix. And when that's in the mix, the hunger signals are just whoo gone. And yeah, so I got to that point where I was literally shoveling food in because I will clear a pantry. You put trigger foods in front of me, game over. And I just went nuts. But there were days where I'm like, yeah, I got to reel it back. Like, this isn't going to be good. I want to be able to like get back to a good place when I'm home. And then I got home and it felt like when you get right back on plan, it's amazing how your body just keeps going. Like it's like a little bump in the road. It's not like a flat tire. And I just sat back and I'm like, all that guilt, all that like kind of
For
food
nothing.
focus for
Oh, that's great. And actually, I know this is a funny conversation for us, but you mentioning that if you just pick right back up where you left off within a matter of days, I think it's surprising that how quickly you can feel so much better. And this is something I feel like I post a lot of content about now, where us coaches, understandably, as we should, often speak in months and years because most people when they come to us, where they're at is 15 to 40 years in the making. You're not undoing that in 3 to 6 months. Like you got some work to do for sure, habit, lifestyle, mindset, etc. But I think something that gets lost in the shuffle, like by us inadvertently, we have good intentions, is that yes, this is a journey, but also you might be days or weeks away from feeling so much better. So again, you said you ate to the point. We've all been there where you felt nauseous. in that moment, the Brian that feels amazing probably felt like a pretty distant memory. This is,
Yeah.
that's a
Well,
different.
I left out, like, I'll be totally transparent because I am on this show. I yacked that night because I ate too much. I haven't yacked ever from drinking too much booze. I have done it from eating too much food.
Yeah. No, and again, I think we've all been there to some degree. And in those moments, I'm like, it was just 3 days ago where I felt awesome. Like it just feels like the old me, or
Yeah.
just feels so far in the future.
You,
So
you, you
yes,
could see it get like floating away from you, like, come back. We were so good.
I know. But again, yes, months and years important for sure. We need to drill that, but also like I often give people just a handful of daily non-negotiables, the feel good fast stuff. So, okay, for the next 7 days, here's a hydration goal. I want your phone out of the bedroom at night. I want you at this step minimum, and maybe try to get some of those steps immediately after you have a meal. So, okay, I want you at 8,000 steps whenever possible. Get some of those right after you eat. Maybe a hydration goal, and phone out of the bedroom, because the compound effect of that is enormous of going to bed earlier, feeling less stressed and anxious from not doom scrolling in bed, wake up with more energy the next day, etc. So like everything I just mentioned, you give me 5 to 7 days, you feel noticeably better. So yes, months and years, great, but also you are very likely closer to feeling noticeably better than you might think, than you might feel in this moment.
Yeah. And I love that we're focusing on these like short, quick hits because I think that's what people do need to lean on. Because, like, let's be honest, we love those quick hits of success. We love the instant gratification. And that's why training is so awesome, because you can see I did 5 more pounds, or I feel really good leaving the gym. But how you mentioned before, when you leave a meal, like, do you feel bloated, or do you feel like, wow, that was good? I feel light and it doesn't feel like I have a brick in my stomach. Like, those are those little things that you need to think about so that way you get that quick hit and it's not, well, I'm doing the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, of course, this is a big conversation in the fitness industry of what contributes to long-term success the most. What do people have in common who lose the weight, keep it off, and just make this stuff a lifestyle? And obviously, that's at least somewhat complex topic, variety of environmental, social factors, mindset, etc. But I do think a fairly consistent theme amongst my clients that, say, I worked with 11 years ago who are still doing well, is that they make most of their decisions based on that feel good factor. So, okay, let's remove the numerical guardrails. Let's say for a second, you're not just making decisions for the two reasons that most people are: to fall within their calorie range and to get the scale to be lower the next day. If we remove that for a second, we get rid of those guardrails, and you make most decisions just based on, I want to feel pretty damn good most of the time. Inevitably, you're going to eat more foods that have whole foods that have protein and fiber. You're going to drink lots of water throughout the day. You'll go to bed earlier. You will not never drink or splurge, but you'll be fairly picky about when it's worth it. I don't know if I already said walking a lot, strength training. You'll do those things that tend to take care of the numbers, not necessarily for weight loss, because generally needs to be a bit more precise, but at least from a maintenance perspective. So I always encourage my clients to proactively pay attention to that too. Like, yes, calories, weight loss, body weight averages, that stuff matters for sure. Like, it has its place, but also, what do your best days have in common in terms of, like, when you feel really good? Let's also be emphasizing those. That way, when you eventually reach your weight loss goal, you don't feel aimless. You don't feel like, well, now what? Well, we have these other things that we can focus on. And again, when you check those boxes, a lot of times the more numerically driven stuff tends to mostly take care of itself. Again, for maintenance, weight loss, you generally have to be a bit more precise.
Yeah. And it's always good to wean off and focus on these things so it's like you're progressing, because if you just jump right into the intuitive stuff right when you hit your goal, it usually doesn't go too well. But if you
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm going to track my calories and then I want to make a connection in my head of this is how that feels, and then you lean on the feeling, kind of like when you're in the gym and you're giving somebody a million and one cues and they're like doing this checklist, but eventually that checklist turns into, it just needs to feel this way, and then all of a sudden everything clicks into place. It's the same thing with nutrition, where it's like I'm chasing this feeling, and that's probably going to be around this calorie mark, around this much protein, because I know how that feels.
You explained that perfectly. I'm not adding anything to that.
I'll just take that win. And then, yeah, that's it. Goodbye. And also the thing too is that the people that do really like keep those results for life. I know I've somewhat hit this point in the last like 1 to 2 years because I've been that person that's always 20 pounds, 40 pounds up or down, like forever, just can never keep it off until recently, because you start making those decisions in your head where it's like, okay, I'm going to eat something. What do I want out of this meal? And that for many people is I just want to eat something and I want it to taste really good. But as you do this, you realize and you take that mindful second to be like, you know what? I have X amount of time before my next meal, or I've got to do all these things. I want to be mentally sharp. I want to be full. And I don't want to get past that hunger threshold later before dinner to the point where I just want to splurge. So what do I have to do right now to make that happen? And it's usually you make a pretty good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I always use the expression, not every meal needs to check every box. There are a variety of goals for any meal, and sometimes a meal can check multiple boxes. Examples being, pure performance. You see powerlifters eating Sour Patch Kids. Whether or not they need to do that, I don't know. But powerlifters eating Sour Patch Kids. They have a performance-based goal for that meal. A pure health perspective, maybe 1,000-calorie salad from Cheesecake Factory. Maybe that checks the box of being mostly nutrient dense. Obviously, got to keep an eye on the fat sources. Somebody who's looking to lose weight, probably going to be a bit more calorie and protein focused. Maybe the objective is just to enjoy yourself, like the night you got the risotto with the seafood. That it doesn't sound like you're thinking about being as shredded as possible.
No, top priority is I'm with my family. I'm having fun. We're getting margaritas. I don't give a shit, and not giving a shit and being okay with it was the goal.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So that's a great example. Yeah. So not every meal needs to check every box. Now, if you have a specific goal, most of your meals should be, checking the box that's in line with whatever that goal is. But I think that many people almost have too high of a bar. This is like the ultimate unsexy little soundbite here. I think most people have far too high of a bar for how their healthy meals need to taste. Oftentimes, it just needs to get the job done. It just needs to be good enough. Actually, an example, right before this podcast, I realized I was mostly out of groceries. So I had oatmeal that was water, instant oats, protein powder, and a banana. If you looked at it, you'd probably rate it a 3 out of 10. Flavor, maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. But it got the job done. I got protein, I got fiber. I stayed ahead of any intense hunger buildup that would have slapped me in the face after this podcast and maybe led to me ordering empanadas. I now feel very sharp on this call, right? Like I feel sharp on this call. I don't feel lethargic and bloated. I don't feel gross. I feel like good that I made that decision. I feel proud that reinforces my identity as a health conscious person. And no, that wasn't a meal that I would likely prepare if I had friends over and I wanted to have something really tasty. Like here's water and oats. Probably not, but it checked boxes that I wanted.
Let me make you my special dish.
Oh, that's great.
Hey, if I ever make it down there, I expect some oats and a banana.
I got you covered. You want to be underwhelmed aesthetically and flavor wise by a meal, I am your guy. I got you covered.
Hey, when you set the bar so low, there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, if you swap the water for a vanilla almond milk, even that feels like
you bougie bitch.
A little honey, I don't know why I sprinkle honey.
Yeah, I mean, if that's how you do honey in your house, you just say, we don't need that honey dipstick. I just do this.
Like salt, remember Salt Bae?
Yeah, Salt Bae, except it drips down your elbow so you get it all.
You drip. Oh, I wouldn't even want the salt.
So somebody's going to hear this and do it, and we're just going to feel terrible for their guests. But you know what? It happens. But anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know that you said you were good till top of the hour. I'm going to respect it. And I know that everybody listening right now is probably like, wow, just bomb after bomb after bomb. Like, oh my God, so much good stuff. But Sam puts out incredible stuff on the daily, like his posts, especially the text ones, the carousel. He's an absolute wizard at it. So if they want to catch those, where do they find you?
I appreciate that, man. So Instagram is at Coach Sam Forget. And I feel like I mentioned this the last time I was on the podcast. I also have a free nutrition guide And the site URL is literally freenutritionguide.com. So it's nice and easy to remember.
Damn.
Yeah, if you want some, yeah, I know, just free nutrition guide. I can't remember again if we talked about I nerd out on some web stuff sometimes, the domains. But if you want to see my emails, you go to samsemails.com. Want to see my podcast, samspodcast.com. It's just nice and simple for each of them. But yeah,
Nice.
at Coach Sam Forget for Instagram stuff, and then freenutritionguide.com if you want a free nutrition guide.
If there's any other Sams in the world that are personal trainers and nutrition coaches looking for domains, they're probably like, motherfucker, why can't I find anything?
With the exception of, so the one handle, I guess it's the handle, not a domain, but the only one that I don't have that I'm so salty about is my own name on Instagram. I am only at Coach Sam Forget because I used to have just at Sam Forget. I got off Instagram for a month. I came back, some random dude, and I don't want to send my traffic to this page, but some random dude. And I've DM'd.
We go, all 300 to 400 people who listen to this podcast, all 400 strong are going to go spam that guy and get Sam his tag back.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm not trying to blow up anybody's spot here, but he doesn't use it. He posts annually. So I've commented, I've DM'd, and technically I'm not supposed to do that. Hopefully Instagram doesn't hear this and banish my account. But I'm like, hey, if you're not using it, it would be awesome. Like if I could have it. So yeah, that's the one exception, and that's how I became at Coach Sam Forget.
I do know that this podcast has reached the Valley in California. So if anybody happens to know Instagram people, let's just not let them know that. All right.
Yeah.
So I love you guys out there. We want to keep a good relationship. But anyway, if at any point you guys did hear something during this podcast that really like clicked in your head, or you have that person in your life that you're like, they need to hear what Sam just said, go ahead and send them this podcast episode. They will thank you for it, and so will we. So Sam, thank you again for coming on. Everybody who made it this far, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later. But until then, go kick some ass. Bye-bye.